Good evening and welcome to the 2018 organizational meeting, January 3rd, 2018. Happy New Year to everyone. I'll ask that everyone please rise for the pledge. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We'll officially call this meeting to order, and I'll ask our clerk to please call the roll.
Here.
LaFountain. Here.
Metzler. Here. Moore.
Here.
Quinn.
Here.
Thank you. We will start this evening with communications and announcements, and I'll start with our town clerk for her first of the year appointments.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. I would like to appoint for a one-year term Deputy Town Clerk Lisa S. Grosser and Office Clerk 3 Susan M. Scheid. And I would also like to appoint on behalf of Margaret Revelle, Receiver of Taxes, her Office Clerk 3 Lisa Gaspar.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Quinn, any announcements?
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. Good evening, everyone, and Happy New Year. While the cold weather has many of us indoors, it is important to keep an eye on what is happening outdoors. Wintry weather can create many safety hazards from ice buildup or heavy snowfall. Two critical items property owners should be mindful of are their neighborhood fire hydrants and structural heating exhausts. The Adopt a Hydrant program allows citizens to claim responsibility for shoveling out fire hydrants in the event firefighters need to connect to a hydrant for an emergency. Clearing 3 feet of snow and ice from a hydrant allows for quick, easy, and unrestricted access by first responders. This is critical in helping to save lives in housing structures. Our volunteer firefighters thank you in advance for helping them help you. Additionally, most home heating systems have an air intake and exhaust pipe. Blockage of the air intake can cause significant damage to your system, but snow or ice building up on an exhaust vent can be much worse. While most systems will shut down from a blockage of snow or ice, exhaust fumes can easily be forced back into the property beforehand. Carbon monoxide is odorless, colorless, and tasteless, but can be harmful to people and animals. For this reason, it is vitally important to keep your exhaust vent clear. Once you've found your vents, it is a good idea to mark their location outside so that if they become buried in snow, you can easily find them. And finally, please look out for your elderly or handicapped neighbors, taking a few extra minutes to shovel out their hydrants and heating systems as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councilwoman Metzler.
Thank you, Supervisor. I have one announcement this evening. With the holiday season at a close, many residents are looking to dispose of their Christmas trees. The Department of Public Works is again accepting non-artificial trees for recycling at the Highway Garage located at 1607 Jackson Road. Trees can be dropped off at any time, being placed just to the right side of the DPW gates. Look for the sign that says Christmas trees. All trees will be grounded up and made part of the mulch pile, which is available on the west side of the Town Hall complex for residents to use for free. Thank you for choosing to recycle your Christmas tree to benefit our community. We encourage all who still have their Christmas trees up to dispose of them in this manner. Thank you.
Thank you. I have 3 announcements this evening. Earlier, prior to the meeting, we held our swearing-in ceremony for the candidates that were elected in the fall of 2017. I'd like to recognize Town Board members Paula Metzler, Andy Moore, sworn in for the Town Council. I'd also like to recognize Town Clerk Amy Steckloff and Town Justice Jim Mully, and as well as myself were sworn in earlier. So congratulations to everyone. I'd also like to recognize the Honorable Matthew Rosenbaum, who is in the audience. He was here as part of the swearing-in ceremony, and former Town Board member. And Matt, always great to see you. My second announcements are the first of the year appointments. So if you would bear with me, please. As provided for New York State Town Law, I will make the following appointments and assignments at this special meeting, January 3rd, 2018. For a one-year term, Deputy Supervisor Andy Moore. For a 2-year term, confidential admin support Anna Napton. Town Attorney Dick Horwitz. Town Historian Kathy Knauer. Tax Receiver Margaret Revelle. The following Town Board committees will be established at this meeting as well, and the chair chair people for those are as follows. Community Services, Linda Cole. Law and Finance, Andy Moore. Public Safety, Rob Quinn. And Public Works, Paula Metzler. The following town board liaisons and 2 other boards and organizations are in effect, again, 1/1/18. The ambulance, and that's Penfield Volunteer, and NEQUALS, Northeast Quality Advanced Life Support, Rob Quinn. Board of Assessment Review, myself. Cable TV, Andy Moore. Conservation Board, Paula Metzler. Energy Environmental Advisory Committee, myself. Fire Districts, Rob Quinn and myself. Friends of Dayton's Corner School, Linda Cole. Health and Wellness Committee, myself. Historic Preservation Board, Paula Metzler. Homeowners associations that are currently registered, and all town board members are liaison to those. Allens Creek Homeowners Association, East Penfield Homeowners Association are the 2 that we have registered today. The Justice Courts Liaison, Paula Metzler. Library Board and Local History Room Advisory Board, that's Linda Cole. The Monroe County Sheriff and New York State Police, Rob Quinn and myself. Penfield Business Chamber, myself. Penfield Little League, Andy Moore. Penfield Symphony Orchestra, Linda Cole. Penfield Youth Council, Rob Quinn. Planning Board, myself. School Districts, Linda Cole and myself. Senior Citizens, myself. Transportation, Andy Moore. Transportation Committee, Andy Moore. Veterans Organizations, Rob Quinn. And Zoning Board of Appeals, Paula Metzler. My last announcement tonight is a reminder that all of the town offices will be closed on Monday, January 15th, in observance of Martin Luther King Day. Mr. Moore.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. The Penfield Trails Committee will be sponsoring a free guided hike at Ellison Park on Saturday, January 13th from 10 a.m. to noon. Please plan on bringing your cross-country skis or snowshoes. This hike will follow the predominantly flat portions of Ellison Park on the north side of Blossom Road. Please look for hike signs. While the hike is free, participants are encouraged to pre-register by contacting the Penfield Recreation Department at 340-8655. Thank you.
Councilwoman Cole.
Okay, I'd like to congratulate all of you that were sworn in this evening. And my one announcement is that, as I've done for several years, I'll continue having community chats at the library. I have it the 3rd Tuesday of the month, and my first one will be Tuesday, January 16th from 5:30 to 7 in the new book area in the library. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Mr. Horwitz.
Congratulations to everybody. I'm looking forward to a great 2018, and best of health to all of you.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, we'll move on to public participation. 2 opportunities to address the board on any matter at this time and again at the end of the agenda. You can do that one of 3 ways. If you're in the audience, you can address the board here at the podium. You can call in at 340-8771, or you can log in at penfield.org, and we'll get a hard copy right up here at the dais. So with that, I'll ask our clerk, has anyone signed up to speak? And if you haven't, that's okay. We'll get to that group after we go through those that have signed up.
Bob Peterson.
Thank you, and Happy New Year, and congratulations to all of you.
Thank you. Happy New Year, Bob.
Bob Peterson from 1931 Clark Road, and I appreciate the opportunity to speak tonight because I know you have a busy organizational meeting ahead of you. I'll try to keep my thoughts organized and as brief as possible, but I think I've got some important matters to discuss with you tonight, and I'm speaking on behalf of myself as a resident at 1931 Clark, just across from Shadow Pines, but also as a member of the informal group known as Save the Shadow Pines. A little bit more background about myself as a resident and a member of the town. My wife and I moved here in 1964 following my military service, and we lived for 2 years at the apartments just south of the Four Corners on Braebuff Drive. We then bought a home in one of the first homes built in the Village Green subdivision, which is just the other side of Shadow Lake, just east of Shadow Lake, and we lived there for 22 years. After that, we built our dream home on Clark Road, right across from the ninth hole of Shadow Pines, and we anticipated we'd have that beautiful scene for the rest of our lives, and I'm here to say now that I'm very concerned about what might happen with Shadow Pines for my own personal concern and as well as for the rest of the town. Everything was good up until about the year 2000 when a $32 billion corporation, a gravel corporation, gravel and asphalt corporation from Dublin, Ireland came here and bought the property, all of the Dolomite properties from the Odenbach owners. So I've lost my favorite golf course, Shadow Pines, and I've got the prospect of looking at the backsides of 250 homes with acres and acres of vinyl siding, so I'm not too happy about that. I'm also not too happy about the fact that I'm sitting on top of their drainage liability that belongs to Old Castle. The entire drainage of the north side, the front, what we call the front nine of Shadow Pines, drains out into my backyard, and I'm a little concerned about what happens if there's 250 homes over there. But I'm going to keep that for another, that's a matter for another time. I did send a letter to all of you, an email letter, and I'd like to deliver that tonight, and there were a couple of attachments to it. I've added a third, which I'll give to you, Amy. The subject line on the letter was 30-year promise, and I'd like to talk a little bit about that. One of the attachments to the letter was a 55-page PDF file, which was what we call the reclamation plan that the quarry files every 5 years with the DEC down in Avon. The other attachment was a summary of a court case. And I've got a third attachment I'd like to talk about tonight. But my first question is, have you read the reclamation plan?
I have. I personally, Bob, had read it many years ago and did it a quick glance over when you submitted your email. And a term we've come across in some of our discussions and in our research is the word estoppel. Sounds like stopple, but it's spelled with an E. Could you care to give me a definition of what you think estoppel means? Mr. Horowitz, perhaps? And Mr. Horowitz, I'll just remind you before we get too far down, use the microphone.
Thank you. In what context, Bob?
In the context of a 30-year reclamation plan.
It's still too abstract for me.
Okay, if you care not to answer it, I'll come back when I explain a little more about what's in that 30-year plan. Okay, thank you. It's a legal term, and that's why I push it to our attorney. Right. I understand it's a legal term. That's why I'd like to get a definition of it, because I'm not sure I've got it right, but it means something to me, and I'd like to check that. And then, Amy, if you've got a third attachment, Amy will make sure that the board gets copies of that third attachment if it was not part of the original email. Right. Thank you. It's just so you know, it's this one. It's published by the Division of Local Government Services at New York State. It's entitled Zoning and the Comprehensive Plan. That's the third. Thank you. The letter, as I said, on the subject line was an email, and the subject line said 30-year promise. And I'm not going to read the whole entire letter. You have it. But part of my letter says, for 30 years, Dolomite and Oldcastle have been promising that the land we know as Shadow Pines would be developed as parkland, adding to the recreational opportunities in the town. And they have not been saying that they would sell the land to a developer of single-family homes. They have not been saying they would sell it to the town. They have been saying their plan is to develop it as parkland. This plan has been filed since 1984, and it's updated every 5 years, the last time being 2013. And Oldcastle has been in ownership of this property since 2000. So they've filed this plan 3 years. Comes up for renewal this year, so they'll probably do it again, and I'll bet it'll be changed. But anyway, this is the key phrasing, Mr. Horowitz, that I'd like your description of your view of what estoppel means. In the plan, there's on page 7 of the mind use plan, which we call the reclamation plan, is titled Land Use Objectives. The eventual development of this land after commercial operations cease will be an attractive addition to the town of Penfield, conforming with their master comprehensive plan. The plan to be developed after commercial activities cease at the Penfield Quarry involves the construction of a multi-use structure that will include parking and service facilities, shopping facilities, offices, and communal activities and condominiums. It will be located in the vicinity of the Whalen-Clark Road intersection and will be surrounded by a parkland to the north, west, and south, and that would be Shadow Pines Golf Course, and a recreational lake to the east, formed by allowing the quarry pit to fill with precipitation, groundwater, and runoff. This recreational lake will be used for boating, ice skating, and fishing. Such a development will service the townspeople well, adding to the recreational opportunities in the town. It's very nice, and they've been saying that for 30 years, Mr. Horowitz. So that's the context of my question about estoppel. The attachments to the letter were 2, and I've added a third. The first one was the 1984 to 2013 Mind Land Use Plan. It was a 55-page PDF file, which Amy has. A 1965 summary of a lawsuit entitled Dolomite versus Kuipers, which is the town of Gates. And in brief, it was a suit over the fact that Dolomite was trying to move quarry operations into a vacant area that was a buffer zone between the residential area there, and they were prohibited from doing that. But it sort of validates the concept of having a buffer between a quarry and residential areas. The third one is that I've added is the 2015 publication called Zoning and Comprehensive Plan. And I'd like to read a few passages from that. As members of the town board, you're probably familiar with this, but those of us who are struggling to understand how this all works find this rather interesting. A few passages. New York zoning enabling statutes, the state statutes which give cities, towns, and villages the power to enact local zoning laws, require that zoning laws be adopted in accordance with a comprehensive plan. The comprehensive plan should provide the backbone for the local zoning law. Further down it says, a comprehensive plan that is kept current is necessary before a local government can lawfully adopt or amend zoning. In New York, the zoning enabling acts continue to require that zoning be undertaken, quotes, in accord with a well-considered plan, unquote, or, quotes, in accordance with a comprehensive plan, unquote. It also gets into the idea of the subject of spot zoning, because this often comes up when you're making changes. Illegal spot zoning occurs whenever the change is not part of a well-considered and comprehensive plan calculated to serve the general welfare of the community. In other words, it can be done if it serves the welfare of the community. The courts have required the municipal governing body to zone in accordance with a land use policy which is in the interest of the overall community. regulation through zoning should serve the entire community. Adoption of a comprehensive plan under the current state zoning enabling provisions is voluntary. However, once an actual plan is adopted, all land use regulations must be in accordance with it. This usually means, though it is not mandated, that plan adoption is followed by the adoption of a series of zoning laws designed to implement the comprehensive plan. This is the final summary. Once a comprehensive plan is adopted using the state zoning enabling statutes, all land use regulations of the community must be consistent with the comprehensive plan. That tells us our zoning should follow the comprehensive plan. The plan we have now was, I think, a very valid plan. Tony, I think you and Rob worked on it. I know you put a lot of hours into it. I don't think it's wishful thinking. I don't think it's window dressing. I think it's a real plan. And I'm kind of concerned that we're here and we don't have the zoning that complies with the plan. But back to my question about estoppel, Mr. Horowitz. How do you feel estoppel applies to the Dolomite and Oldcastle Corporation, which has been saying for 30 years they would develop that area as parkland?
They made those statements and representations to the Department of Environmental Conservation.
Yes.
In the context of their permit.
Yes, indeed.
So I think if the DEC sees there is a binding promise there that Dolomite can't walk away from, and somehow they were prejudiced in granting a permit in reliance on them, that would be a question for them.
It's not.
But in any event, a reclamation plan, it seems to me, comes into play when the Dolomite operation is over, which I understand could be in about 30, 35 years. And circumstances change, so on and so forth.
Right, but
so in any event, what an appropriate reclamation plan ought to be, I would hope would be a plan that would be developed by Dolomite in concert with the town of Penfield, if Dolomite owns the property at that time.
Well, they do.
They
and
do
they
today,
did.
yes.
And they did it in concert with our master comprehensive plan. It says so.
But they may not own Shadow Pines.
They do.
They own it today. But they may not own it in the not-near future, but we can't predict the future.
Yeah, but it doesn't say they could sell it for houses and development. It said that they were going to make a parkland out of it.
A private landowner always has the ability to sell their property.
It's not your problem. Okay, gotcha.
Pardon? Huh?
Is there any response to the passages I read from the zoning and comprehensive plan? How do you feel about the fact that zoning should follow the comprehensive plan?
So certainly that's one of the things that we have looked at, Bob, over the years. And so the most recent example that I can point to is mixed use. Mixed use was part of the last comprehensive plan. This board embarked on going through about a 3-year process to put that into place. And I think one of the things that we've talked about is with this upcoming comprehensive plan, one of the components there is obviously dealing with all of the golf courses in the town of Penfield, and that's one thing that's on the radar screen for this board as part of that process that we will be undertaking in 2018.
Bob, in building on that question that you're asking about the comprehensive plan as being the foundation for zoning that any town can legislate, there are many principles and many objectives stated in the comprehensive plan. There are many suggestions. Residential housing, senior housing, industry, and appropriate parcels. And the fact that there's a suggestion made in any particular plan that may have existed 50 years ago and just been repeated over many years, but there are, as to recreation that you're alluding to, but there are other principles that are set forth in comprehensive plans relating to housing needs that are needed in the community, so on and so forth. So all of those principles come into play in enacting zoning legislation.
But our current comprehensive plan, which has been around since 2010, or actually was implemented in 2011, is part of the executive summary, and in other parts shows this map, which clearly specifies the future land use for Shadow Pines, as well as Shadow Lake, and some other areas should be recreational and sanctuary use.
I understand.
I understand the town's involved in very difficult negotiations with Oldcastle and Dolomite over the purchase, and don't want to go too far into that, but as far as how the negotiations are taking place, who is the negotiating team, Tony? Is it you and Mr. Horowitz, or is somebody else?
Mr. Horowitz and myself have been the two that have been designated by this board. We're working with a real estate attorney that this board appointed now more than a month or so ago, and that individual is the one that is working with the attorneys from Oldcastle.
Do you meet and sit down with them across the table, or is this done by mail?
Well, typically, as you can imagine, the attorneys for Oldcastle are in Atlanta, and so a lot of the discussion is via conference call and email follow-up.
You might have a negotiating tool here with that 30-year promise they made. Would you think you might lay that on the table and ask them to give you a little more time to conduct your referendum, and move the January 31st deadline? Do you think they would listen to you if you brought a little muscle to the table?
So what I'll say is that our attorney, Mr. Trinelli, has been using all aspects available to him as part of the discussion with Oldcastle. I've said before, and I'll continue to say, that both parties continue to negotiate in good faith. As you can imagine, the holiday period with a lot of year-end things happening and what have you, that wasn't as an efficient period of time as anybody would like, but there was still communication that went back and forth between the town and Oldcastle. And we continue to negotiate in good faith with them, and I believe they with us.
We'll ask them why they're trying to sell it for development when they've said for 30 years it was going to be parkland.
We'll pass that on to Mr. Trinelli.
Would you mind if I sent a copy of my 30-year promise letter down to Mr. Mark Toe and Mr. David Toolin down in Atlanta?
Certainly, you have the right. You have the right to.
Would that would that mess up anything you're doing?
All I would say is that both parties continue to negotiate in good faith, and I feel comfortable.
Well, that shouldn't disturb that. It's just I'm bringing to their attention something they've been saying for 30 years, and I don't know if you can use the estoppel term on them or not, but I thought estoppel meant something along the lines that when you tell somebody you're going to do something over and over again, and then you do something different, you might have a bit of a legal problem there, and I just don't know if it's in this context or not, Mr. Horowitz. But just don't know. We have a referendum coming up on February the 27th, I believe. Will you be ready?
Well, this board, we have a new business resolution before us this evening. That resolution passes. That sets the date. We'll continue negotiating with Oldcastle, and I will be cautiously optimistic that that will come together.
Do you have a communications or marketing plan in place yet?
We've been working on that, Bob, and our team has been working on that. So
we have also, and we might be able to help in that respect.
Okay.
And Andy, you've offered, to be our go-between, but I think you'll hear more about that tonight from Tim. Neil Madden beat you once. He might beat you again. What's your plan B if the referendum fails?
Well, there's a number of things that we'll have to take a look at, Bob, and there are things that this board and Mr. Horowitz and staff have been looking at and reviewing. So, we'll cross that bridge if we get to that bridge.
With all the evidence you have of the comprehensive plan, some court cases that validate the concept of a buffer zone. You have the advisory committee report that says it should be open space. You've got a lot of tools to support you if you choose to rezone it. I thought, and I mentioned it in the letter, it might be cheaper to rezone it and spend a couple of $100,000 fighting the law case that Oldcastle would bring. Might be cheaper than the $3.65 million we got to spend to buy it. Just a thought.
Mm-hmm.
I've even come up with a slogan with that respect. If you can't own it, you must rezone it. Sort of like OJ when the
Sure.
glove didn't fit,
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
We could have 100 people outside there chanting, if you can't own it, you must rezone it. So you're about to sit down and start to write another plan, another comprehensive plan.
That's correct.
Well, we've kicked the can down the road so far, now the can's in your driveway, Tony. I'm sorry to say, but now the fact that we didn't get the zoning in place is here upon us.
I think there's been 7 administrations that have kicked that can down the road, Bob.
I heard you say that at the last meeting.
Yeah.
And
So we're all, that's currently on our plate now, and we'll have to deal with that because the others have not, and for some reason they may have believed because of what was there and what had been there for so many years, they made the assumption that it would always be there. But I think one thing that we learned through this is that everything is subject to change.
I know how much effort goes in. We worked 4 months on the moratorium on the advisory committee, and that took a lot out of all of us. And I know what must have gone into that plan you and Rob worked on with Debbie Draw as the chairperson. And it's just a shame to see all that effort made, and it just goes for naught. Someday we got to take responsibility and get the job done. I mean, we townspeople, we elect you and we pay your salaries, and we expect you to preserve and enhance our quality of life. And it seems that the only ones who get attention are the developers and the big corporate interests that come to town. I'm almost done, but what about safety? If somebody puts 250 homes across the road from a huge quarry pit, it's 154 acres. The cliffs, just off of Whalen Road, the cliffs are 130 feet straight down. Tony, did you ever do any stupid stuff when you were between the ages of 10 and 17?
I think we both have, Bob.
I did a lot. I can't imagine the fun I would have had if there was a quarry with whole bunch of neat stuff down in the bottom, an asphalt plant, grinding machines, rock haulers. There could be 400 to 500 school-aged kids living there. If you put 200 homes on the front 9, I know the Penfield School District says there's 1.2 kids per house, but that's on average, and there's a lot of houses that are empty nesters like myself and others. The homes that Ryan Homes are building probably have 2 or more kids per house. You could have 500 school-aged children over there. So what happens when their drone goes over the fence, or their football or soccer ball? Every year it gets bigger, it gets deeper. So who's responsible when the first kid falls in the pit?
Well, in the litigious society that we're in today, my guess is that Oldcastle will be sued, and anyone else that they could sue at that time, including the town.
Are they thinking rationally when they want to let some builder put a couple of hundred homes over there, right across the road from there?
Well, today they're negotiating with us in the town of Penfield to buy that property. And that's what I'm concentrating on, is continuing to work on.
I understand. I'm glad you are.
We can speculate about all of the different things that may or may not happen there. Right now, I need to stay focused on working with our attorneys and moving forward as directed by this board, and certainly by many residents in this town, and that is to look to purchase that property.
And I'm glad you're working, and I hope you're successful. But if you get through that first step, we still got to win the referendum, and that's not a no-brainer.
Absolutely.
I guess I don't have, maybe I should skip this one, but it's about how town boards might be remembered. We remember some of our town boards that built the town hall and the Veterans Memorial Park all around it. Another, Rothfuss Park we can be thankful for. Linear Park we can be thankful for. We can be thankful for the $10 million the bond issue that was passed to protect our farmland. I hope you guys are remembered well. I hope you're not remembered as the town board that lost Shadow Pines to a $32 billion gravel company from Dublin, Ireland. I'm done, and thank you very much.
Absolutely. Thank you. Our next speaker, Tim Murphy, and then after that, Bill.
Good evening, Town Board. Tim Murphy, 48 Corral Drive. Congratulations and Happy New Year.
Thank you.
I've been part of the advocacy group for Shadow Pines, and as I see it, there's 2 critical path items that are facing us right now. First, the looming January 31st deadline. And I just want to ask point blank and for clarity, has there been any communications between you and Oldcastle that would lead you to believe that it might get extended?
What I can say, Tim, is that negotiations continue. The January 31st date is still there, but there is active communications and negotiations going on between both parties.
Okay, so thank you for that. Realizing that a lot of us have sat down and talked this through to the nth degree, and given that we don't have some answers, we come up with our own scenarios. So one of the things that frustrates the heck out of us is, why are the negotiations taking so long? Do you have an answer for that?
Tim, all I can say is that both of us are at the table. We're talking, and the negotiations are not as easy as buying a home. It's we're looking to buy 211 plus acres. We're dealing with a number of different pots, including Penfield, Atlanta, and Dublin. So there are just a lot of pokers that are in the fire, and things just don't happen overnight. A normal real estate transaction to buy a house typically doesn't take just a week or two. It tends to take longer unless you have a pure cash deal no contingencies, and all of those types of things.
Thank you, and I think we get that. But I also believe that, again, we're looking for some more. So we know one thing for sure that was done was the first phase seeker, the State Environmental Quality Review Act, which actually, you know, people have a legacy here in Penfield for that, Irene Gosson. But can you say, is there anything in that phase 1 report that is slowing down or influencing these negotiations?
What I'll say is that there were some items that were found as it related to asbestos and lead, for asbestos and lead abatement, and a question about, you know, some chemicals in the ground, but those are all part of the phase 2 review that we have teed up and ready to go.
So, Mr. Supervisor, is that secret report something that you would make available, or we would have to put a Freedom of Information Act?
That will be, the phase 1 is available today, and the phase 2, once completed, will be available.
Do you have an estimate when phase 2 will be completed?
I would say that as we near the purchase and sales agreement, then we're ready to go on a moment's notice with CNS to complete the phase 2 of that.
Mr. CNS?
CNS is the engineering firm that did phase 1 and are teed up to do phase 2.
So if I came to the clerk's office tomorrow and asked for a copy of the secret phase?
I think I'll double check, Tim, but I think the phase 1 could be online on the project file. But don't hold me to that. Don't hold me to that. But that would be something that we could ultimately get up on the project file.
Okay, so thank you. I'll call the clerk's office tomorrow. And just, again, because we don't have some answers to questions and we know things are sensitive, you know, we're trying to imagine what the slowdown is. We know the price, the assessment price is out there. We know the boundaries of the transaction. And again, we're trying to imagine what else is happening here. There's been conversation as well that maybe there's a third party involved. There's been some hearsay about, you know, the community, the town buying some of the land and some of it going to development, which isn't in keeping with the moratorium's clear recommendation.
Tim, so, I will tell you that the town is currently negotiating for 211 plus acres to be under town ownership.
Okay, so the full property.
The full property.
Okay, thank you. And the second critical path item then is, assuming that we get some relief from the January 31st date, that we go to referendum. And again, I was part of the 2001-2002 open space. So the advocacy group got together, Save Shadow Pines, and so we put together, you know, a similar document that we used back then, kind of question and answers. So here's 6 copies of it.
Thank you. This is recently that was put, or is when the property first went on the market, Tim?
So this document,
yes,
so was just finished this morning.
Okay.
So the idea was, what questions would the community have? And you'll see some of them are taken verbatim out of the 2002 marketing plan, which I believe Chan Philbrick and Brian Englund created.
That is correct.
As well as the Park and Rec Advisory Board. But again, the idea is there's been so much disinformation out there. We'd love to show the facts, but we all see this as we're in it together. We want to be part of the solution, not part of the problem. So again, we offer this to you. I'd be glad to send the electronic version. And again, nothing frustrated us more than what Mr. Madden did. I was personally aware of some of the conversations, and I had to walk away. I even approached his wife and said, you're not telling the full story about what's going on here. So many people were misled. And that's tragic on all of this. The unintended consequences are terrible. And again, as Mr. Peterson said, the quarry is the big influence here. If there wasn't a big hole in the ground with possible brownfield issues, you know, it'd be a different conversation, but that's not the case. So again, we'd be glad as the advocacy group to help with anything you need to get the word out, whether it's door-to-door, whether it's email. And I wanted to ask, there was a question earlier about neighborhood associations. I know there's a bunch of neighborhoods, well, I shouldn't say a bunch. I know our neighborhood and a few others that have email distribution lists. I think of the 85 homes in ours, over 60 and, you know, all kinds of things. We would love to plug into something that looks like a push of information, so that there isn't a mailing list or a mailing that costs money that goes into the mailbox and in the circular file. So something that, you know, we'd be willing to help with was we try to beat the bushes for, say, a point person in each neighborhood.
So you could be that person, and you could register with the clerk as early as tomorrow morning, and then you would be pushed all the information that comes out, zoning board, planning board, all of those types of things that you could get, and then from there distribute accordingly.
I'm not sure what I'm signing up for here, Tony, but in this case, absolutely. And I'm imagining there's people listening to this tonight that say, oh, we have a neighborhood email distribution list, and it would be a much more efficient way to get some of this information out in a timely manner. So again, I'm not exactly sure what we can do, but I know I would be glad to be the point person in our Bridle Path community, and I'll talk to others. Again, you know, we want the facts to be out there.
Absolutely.
It was terrible how this petition went.
Right. Yeah. Social media, everyone takes or wants to take as factual, and that's unfortunate because folks say things without any accountability or anything. And so the best we can get the facts and the details out, that really is key for this as we move forward. And then folks can make that decision, do I want to support it or not support it, based on the facts, and not just based on social media or being led through social media, misled through social media, excuse me.
The one thing I want to believe, Mr. Supervisor, is that the majority of the people that are involved in this really do care. Mm-hmm. There's some that, you know, are creating chaos, but again, I want to believe that the majority of the people do have a stake, whether it's their favorite golf course or they see the implications of, you know, more traffic on Atlantic Avenue or the quarry. I mean, I just want to believe that. So again, the advocacy group and a bunch of people that you know and that people you don't know are willing to help. We have a list at home of almost 100 people that have signed up on the website with their contact information, with the various things they'd be willing to do. I can't volunteer them, but I can say I have the list.
Got it. Okay.
So one other thing, Mr. Supervisor.
Sure.
I read your column almost every week, and I feel like I learned something. I've been very disappointed, though, that there are probably more than a handful of references to the Shadow Pines conversation. As you saw in the DNC, it was, under the column of land use, the top item that they're watchdogging. I would ask maybe every week, even a couple of sentences, and even if there is no updates going forward, that, you know, we or you put that out there for us, so maybe it keeps us from going in different places on what's going on. Because again, we're going to try to make up our own answer if we don't get them.
So since our last meeting, the 20th, when that item was raised, I have put up a number of supervisor messages right on the front page of the website, giving the best information that we have at the time, even if it is just small incremental steps. And I think the last one that I put up was to let everyone know that the 5-day period that had expired, which was on Tuesday the 26th, and that we were still in active negotiations. Both parties were in active negotiations as part of the purchase and sale of the property. So that was the last item that was put up. It was put up last Thursday, and you know, my commitment was as something significant changed. So tomorrow, the thing that'll go up is hopefully there will be a new business resolution that will pass. I have no reason to doubt that it won't, and that will be setting the date for the bond vote, the actual public vote. However, and I'll just say, however, you know, I just need to remind everyone that we, as of today at 5 o'clock, we still do not have a purchase and sales agreement signed by both parties, and that will be included in that information item as well.
So thank you. Keep the good information coming. Realize there's people that do want to assist in whatever form that is, and then there's insatiable need for updates. I mean, you realize that in the world we live in.
I get that, and I can give you what I've got. You know, it won't change a lot. The big change will be the fact that we passed, or will be passing a resolution authorizing the bond resolution and establishing the date of February 27th. And again, we'll only hit that date if in fact we have an agreed to purchase and sales agreement. And so that's what's taking most of my time these days, is working towards getting that purchase and sales agreement finalized and then ratified.
Keep us posted. Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you. And the electronic version of that, I could send it to the town clerk, I could send it to Amy?
Absolutely.
And you can do with it as you wish, edit and share.
Yep, absolutely.
Thank you. We're here to help, and we want to be part of the bigger conversation. Not too many people are comfortable coming up and talking at the podium, but I assure you there's a lot of people out there that are very interested, and I know you know that.
Yep.
Good night.
Right.
Thank you. Happy
Tim.
New Year.
Happy New Year. Bill?
Bill Sullivan, 1899 Clark Road. First of all, I'm happy to meet our new point person. And now I know who he is and where I can get to him. I'm looking at you, my friend. And one of the first points that I want to make for all of us is I thought that was a very nice brochure. I didn't see the latest thing, but I saw one a couple days ago. I think that's great. I am sensitive because somewhere at a wrong time I said I'd print those for you in the terms of thousands of them. So you need to get, I believe, the town board's support for that brochure, that's a meaningful thing. And you then will get to tell me when you want some copies of that, or maybe the town will say, Bill, forget it, you'll print them, or whatever, but I just want to be supportive in that area. And so you're on the hook for that.
We're all on the hook for that.
I am confident that you are going to get an extension on the time frame. I believe you're working hard at it. I think it's really to Oldcastle's benefit. That then brings me to the issue of the referendum. And I am desperately afraid that our friend Mr. Madden is going to pull out all the stops to object to to make a negative vote on the referendum. Is the board perfectly aware that his primary #1 avowed position on this is that he wants housing on the Gulf environment? Are you all aware of that?
Absolutely.
Yes.
In fact, we
Okay.
pointed that out to him.
And that when he sits up here and protests that he's here only for the purity of the vote process, that is not what's driving him. Are we okay with that perspective?
Absolutely.
Okay.
No, he indicated that, and he wrote a descending as, when the recommendations were
Yeah.
done, he wrote descending paper.
And he spoke directly to my face in this room. Bill, I'm here to ensure that there is housing on there. Now,
Mr. Sullivan, I agree with you 100%. I pointed out at a meeting a couple weeks ago that on the moratorium committee, he sent a memo to the town board and to the members of the moratorium committee titled "An Alternate Point of View." I mentioned his statement in paragraph 2, and this to me is about the evidence that you talk about tonight. Is after considering, and this is basically a quote, after considering the information presented to the committee and the discussions at the committee meetings, I believe the town's long-term interest would be best served by a clustered residential development of Shadow Pines 210 plus or minus acres as permitted by the land's long-standing R120 zoning designation. So absolutely, I think that his ulterior motives were in support of a massive residential development.
Okay. Now, how can, we are going to have to out-Madden in terms of promoting our interest here. And that's going to take a lot of hard work. We've got a point man here. I'm delighted again at that. What can we do? Are there any secondary rationale for why he wants to do this? Can anybody come up with that perspective? His wife is a real estate agent, I've heard that.
I have not heard that, but that could be true.
Okay. Does anyone have any idea why he is so committed to having housing?
I'm not aware of any, Bill. Personally, I'm not aware of any.
Okay. I believe that very carefully and be sure that we don't do something wrong, that we have to show that he did not work in good faith in the initial referendum vote getting that he allowed him to get the 1,000 votes. I think he told people that he was in this to ensure a proper vote situation, where in fact he was doing this to ensure that there would be less chance that the town would be able to buy it. I think we have to do whatever we can to neutralize Neil as best we can, yet we got to fight our own fight to make this thing happen. That's all I want to say, and I'm in this in any way I can do to help it. Am I on the hook, do you think, to printing these brochures, which I can do, or do you think that you guys can help on that?
Well, this is what I'll say. There, you know, one of the things that this board and our staff have been working on is putting together a communication plan, actually similar to this type of thing, following what we did in 2002 for the open space bond vote, that the $10 million bond vote. So we've got all of those files and records that we're working on. So as soon as we're able to open the gates, so to speak, then we will be off and running, and you know,
and communicate with our point guy and your point guys, and put the heads together and come up with the world's best thing.
The key certainly will be able to get all of the right factual information out to all of our residents that have the opportunity to vote, so that when they come to vote on the 27th, and I'm going to be optimistic that we're coming to vote on the 27th, that they've got in possession all of the facts and details.
Okay, the right, that's good. Thank you very much, folks.
Thank you, Bill.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good to see you. Carol? And then Mel.
Carol Samuel, 27 Huntington Meadow, and I realized that Huntington Meadow got the picture in the paper on Friday with the story. On New Year's Eve, I was invited to an Irish New Year's Eve celebration down on Huntington Brook with friends of mine, and the Irish thing was so that the kids could celebrate New Year's Eve at 7 o'clock, and then
nice.
We wouldn't wear them out at midnight.
I should have been there.
It was fun. It was so much fun. But the thing that happened was, so I hear that the town bought Shadow Pines from my neighbors. I heard that. And I'm so worried about that, because in 2016, Mr. Andrada with the DNC did a really good job talking about the issue of Shadow Pines and saving it and the moratorium and all those things. And then comes 2017 with Neil Madden, and he gets Andretta's attention. Guess what's in your forefront of your brain anymore?
Town owns the land.
It's terrible. It's terrible. So anything that we can do to get the word out that no, the town has not bought it, that we are at a discussion point hoping to be able to do that is going to be critical right now because people think it's done. When I saw the letter of intent to buy it, I went out and bought a balloon at the dollar store and hung it on my Save Shadow Pines sign in my yard. Yay! Well, it was premature. Now, the other question that I have is who is able to vote on this referendum? We've got all these crazy, crazy people live in Penfield, pay Penfield taxes, but they pay Webster School. They live in Penfield, but they pay some other school. They live in Brighton, but they pay Penfield School. Who is going to be able to vote on this referendum?
Mr. Horowitz, would you like to take a crack at that, sir?
It's called a qualified elector legally. It's a person that's a citizen of the United States. It's a person that has to live in Penfield 30 days prior to the vote, immediately prior. They have to be a resident for 30 days and at least 18 years old at the time of the vote.
Okay, so what about these people that live in Brighton but pay school taxes to Penfield? Because their kids, I mean, my own...
You have to live in Penfield.
You have to live in the town.
Okay, because my husband lived on Fairhaven Road, but his kids went to Penfield. So he wouldn't have been able, in that situation, to vote. Is that correct?
That is correct. He was not a Penfield resident.
Okay.
Penfield School District, but not a Penfield resident.
Okay, so then what is Neil Madden's advantage with this? I mean, he was not telling the whole truth. We know that. He was telling everybody, hey, your taxes are going up if we buy this. And the numbers that we saw was $190,000 average home. It's going to cost $11 a year.
Right.
Hey, I seldom buy Starbucks. I bought some today. $4.25 plus tax. Three of those would have paid my tax bill. Well, maybe my house is worth more than that.
That's a small regular coffee too, I think.
We need to let people know how he has construed things and made it sound awful that our taxes are going up. I live in Penfield, I pay town taxes, got my bill. I pay school taxes. Both of them are going up, the town a little bit, the school, oh my goodness, I don't even want to think about it. How are we going to beat this guy?
Well, I think as a number of people have said, we've got to get, the information out. We've got to be factual with the information that we get out. And then we've got to hit it with multiple sources. We can't be content with just one. It's going to have to be email and direct mailing and at these meetings and neighborhoods that go out and rally their neighborhoods and things like that. Everyone will have to be involved to get the right information out. And then from there, I'm again cautiously optimistic. Once folks have all the right information and details, will result in a favorable vote.
Okay, thank you.
There will be. So there will be others, and whoever those others might be. I'm sure there's going to be others out there that are going to be providing an alternate to that, to say these are the reasons why you shouldn't vote for it. Mm-hmm. And I will say, I will speak for the town only and this board, that anything that we put out will be factual. We'll be able to point to where we got the information, how we got the information, and things like that. Anyone else that puts information out, especially looking for a negative vote, I think it's critical for all of us to take a look at that, and if there is inaccurate information, to call that out.
It might not be inaccurate, it might be only incomplete.
Well, I think inaccurate or incomplete, both of those are failures to the residents of the town and need to be corrected.
I just came from Eastview Mall today, and I drove along 250, and I saw Town of Penfield, and I thought, you know what, I'm willing to put on really warm clothes and go meet the person who was right at that line, and all those, I'm willing, I have avoided going to my Cape Cod house, where I need to go to do some work, but I want to be here. I want to be here to be part of the troops, part of the foot power, part of the hand power, part of the standing at top. Somebody else has got to do Wegmans, because I'm such a top supporter. But seriously, we have to be in any place. And if it's information that comes from the town, I presume it will have town letterhead.
That is correct.
Thank you.
Anything that we put out will have town letterhead or will be on town letterhead. That is correct.
Thank you. I guess you all get the passion that many of us have. Lori Rayner said we're going to call ourselves Team Shadow.
Team Shadow.
I think that's
All
a
right.
good approach.
Okay, great. I've got Mel Callan first, and then next after that.
Good evening. Mel Callan, 1410 Harris Road. And I want to clarify that I live really in East Penfield, and so I'm not anywhere around the neighborhood of Shadow Pines, but care very much with what happens with that property. Just a couple questions and then something unrelated to Shadow Pines. Tony, you put out the timeline, which was pretty significant on December 5th. And so just in relation to Tim's question about transparency, but also keeping those of us who are very concerned informed, is this the first time I mean, it was very comprehensive and I appreciate it. Is this the first time such a timeline was put out?
For this project?
For this project?
Yes.
Yeah, I think to have done it earlier as you went along, I mean, there's a lot of dates here. I think it would have provided guidance for those of us who care very much for that parcel of property. In the future, for anything like this project comes about, I think it would be very helpful to town residents to have such a timeline ongoing so we can stay informed and see what's been happening.
We'll be building on that timeline as part of our communication package, and to show, you know, what the steps are, as you can imagine, and it works out to be 2 pages. That once the board passes the bond resolution, the vote, but there are literally 12 to 15 different pieces to that that have to fall in place by way of notification, periods of time that by law we have to wait for, and things like that. And so that timeline will double in size from what you have. All the steps that need to take place from tonight on.
Yeah, some of this information would have been very helpful earlier on, so that we could have garnered some
we just got the
support.
information. I mean, some of that, Mel, is driven by, you know, when you have the bond vote. And so we're not establishing the bond vote. I mean, we had one bond vote, or excuse me, as part of our referendum back on November 20th. But since then, we didn't have a timeline to talk about because, again, we still don't have a purchase and sales agreement in place. The resolution we're passing tonight, you know, establishing the 27th is contingent upon the fact that we get a purchase and sales agreement here relatively soon.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying about that, and I can appreciate that. But I mean all these different steps of different dates going back from 15 to 16 to 17, particularly what's been happening since the summer and the letter of intent that you received, I believe, on September 20th from Dolomite, and then you responded September 29th. And towards the end of the timeline, you mentioned that after some legal agreement, which I can appreciate also, that January 20th would have been the soonest date you could have had a public referendum. And obviously that would have been within the time frame of their January 31st time frame.
That would have been you still need a month plus to get the money. got to sell your bonds, and that's still a month plus before you get your money, which would be February 20th.
Yeah, I can definitely appreciate that also. But I'm thinking if we were able to have a referendum on January 20th, and I presume it's going to pass. Trust me, there are residents who would work very hard to get it passed. As we worked hard to get the open space referendum passed, that I think that would have been a strong indication to the owners that the money would be coming because the referendum was passed. So I think it would have been, I guess the bottom line question for me is what precluded that possibility of a January 20th referendum?
So what I'm going to say to you, Mel, that if you took a look at that timeline, there were 3 different legs towards the end of that timeline.
Yeah.
And I'd be more than happy to sit down with you to walk through why that couldn't happen and to meet those dates. I don't have that here in front of me tonight. But again, I'll be more than happy to sit down with you and show you how that worked out and how that laid out. But again, today, and the energy that I'm putting forth is that not woulda, shoulda, coulda, trying to get a purchase and sales agreement in place as soon as possible so that we can then take the next steps with getting Phase 2 environmental done, getting all of the notifications and advertisement and information out about the bond vote, and getting all the information in place for absentee ballots and all of that other stuff. And I'm feeling the pressure of time is ticking. So that's what I'm working on right now. I'm not going back to relive 2 or 3 months ago that I can't do anything about. But I would encourage you to set up some time with me to come in, and I'll show you how that couldn't work out for us to have it.
I would also offer, I think one thing that's being lost here, or not raised, is that you know, the supervisor and Mr. Horowitz and Mr. Trinelli have been working very hard on negotiations. We have no guarantee that Oldcastle is not going to push away from the table.
I understand
that. I
that.
trust the supervisor when he doesn't release information that it's for a good cause. And it may be information we don't even have because we're not at the table. I am very concerned that there is no purchase and sale agreement, because that means, in my world, the seller can walk at any time. And we have seen Oldcastle around the country, as well as here locally. They are not afraid to walk. So
I understand that, and I think that's
concern.
why you've had people here over the last few meetings, including tonight, to advocate for that, because we also are very concerned. Otherwise, we wouldn't be here talking about this issue.
And they're very well aware of what's going on in the community, I'm sure. And it's sensitive.
And we've had people talk to them directly as well.
And that's concerning, too.
And you can imagine, we hear he said, she said, they're dragging their feet, you know, each party's dragging their, I mean, we hear it all, and we understand that that's part of negotiation, that kind of response that you're going to get. I think certainly I'm not asking for information such as you relayed in the timeline that you cannot relay to the community, but I thought it would have been very helpful before. Hindsight's 20/20, and I think as we go forward, even if there's a different project, this is the kind of direct communication with the community that would be, I mean, you know there's an active Shadow Pines advocacy group, so there's certainly people that you could talk to directly. Gee, you know, this is public information, just want to make sure that your group has it. That kind of really down-to-earth, kind of meaningful communication with an advocacy group that lives in your town and obviously cares about what goes on here. So I think that answers my questions about Shadow Pines. Totally separate issue. Andy, I know you're the liaison to PCTV Advisory Board. Just a question about that. Is there a board? It looks like on the website the last agenda is from 2011, like 6 years ago. Yeah. So I know it conducts its meetings as needed, but it just seems like it would behoove us to have a real advisory board and meet and come up with some suggestions about how to utilize our community cable television and the things that could be put on there that would be very useful and I think informational, provide knowledge for residents about all kinds of different subjects. So I think it would behoove us to really get a true advisory board together and actually meet and have agendas and minutes and not just keep going on ad nauseum without any kind of board meeting and just let it kind of lump along on its own. That would be my suggestion.
So let me set the record straight. There hasn't been an advisory board for a number of years. There had been advisory boards in the past. Those didn't seem to get very much traction, even though there was a lot of effort put forth by our team downstairs. What happens is that the group downstairs, Andy being the liaison and myself with day-to-day operations, we'll get together as we need to get together to address different things, so whether it's policies or procedures or what have you. But I think there were at least 3 or maybe 4 advisory boards that were in place in the past that just failed because folks, one, either didn't have an interest, thought it was something different than what it ended up being, and what have you. So we haven't had anything along an advisory board for that group for probably, well, since I've been supervisor, and I think many years prior to that.
Yeah, so we need to get interested people on it. And really, I think when you have a call for appointments and you do your interviewing, really get people who are interested and make sure that they have a commitment to it. And if they have to, I think they're periodically, if they lose interest, I think like any board, ask them if they're missing meetings, are you still interested? If not, we'll replace you with people who really are interested and can bring some concrete ideas of how to best utilize our community cable television, which is for and supposed to be by the community. Okay, thank you.
Thanks. Yes, you've got to come forward. You've got to come all the way up. You got to grab that microphone. You got to identify who you are. Carol will yell at you if she can't hear you, or she'll yell at me, which then I'll have to say, could you speak up?
I'm Lori McCallum Rayner, 1915 Clerk Road, and I will yield to everything. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, other speakers at this time? Okay, another opportunity at the end of the agenda. We've got 52 resolutions to go, so sit back, get comfortable, and we will go through that. So
I'm going to read every one.
All right. So
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. All right, we have additions and deletions, and I'll recognize Councilman Moore.
Mr. Supervisor, one addition tonight, I'd like to add to the agenda Resolution 18T-052. That is entitled, to provide for the holding of a special town election to vote upon 2 propositions for the approval of bond resolutions adopted by said board and providing for other matters in connection therewithin.
I second that addition.
Okay, so it's been moved and seconded. That will appear as Resolution 052. Again, that's 18T-052. All right, thank you, Mr. Moore. We'll move on to approval of the minutes. We have the December 6, 2017 minutes before us, and would entertain a motion of approval.
Moved.
Been moved by Mr. Moore.
I don't have it listed. It says approval of minutes dash.
You should have gotten a revised copy. It's December 6, 2017, and it was sent out to you.
All right, this is what was in our box tonight. Okay, thank you.
Okay.
I'll move that, Mr. Supervisor.
Is there a second? It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Seeing no discussion, a roll call vote, please.
Cole.
Aye.
LaFountain.
Aye.
Metzler. Aye. Moore.
Aye.
Quinn.
Aye.
5 ayes.
Petitions. Has the town board, town clerk, or town attorney received any petitions since our last meeting? Seeing none, we'll move on to resolution by function. I'll ask the clerk to read the titles of all the resolutions under law and finance. That will be 001 through 026. And then we'll do the same for Public Works, Public Safety, and Community Services. And with that, Madam Clerk.
001, adoption of town board rules of procedure for 2018. 2, authorization for town supervisor to sign a professional service contract with Edwin A. Summerhays. 3, banking arrangements for the town of Penfield for 2018. 4, authorization for the town comptroller to attend the annual meeting of the NYSGFOA. 5, setting 2018 salary for chairs and members of the Planning, Zoning, Conservation, and Historic Preservation Boards. 6, bonding of town officials and employees. 7, authorization for contract with counsel to town attorney. 8, authorization to sign contract with court stenographer. 9, authorization for town supervisor to sign a professional service contract with Barton and LaJudas for environmental services for 2018. 10, appointments to ethics board. 11, employee handbook revisions. 12, setting holidays for non-union employees for 2018. 13, setting holidays for union employees for 2018. 14, naming of a labor relations consultant to the town of Penfield. 15, setting rate for reimbursement of mileage. 16, monthly reports to town board. 17, authorization for supervisor to renew the agreement with the Northeast Quadrant Advanced Life Support, Nichols, Inc. 18, designation of official newspapers for 2018. 19, town membership in various organizations in 2018. 20, continuation of petty cash funds. 21, appointments to the planning board. 22, appointment of chair to the planning board. 23, appointment of town comptroller. 24, adoption of wage and salary schedule and appointment of officials and employees for 2018. 25, appointment of zoning board of appeals. 26, appointment of chair, zoning board of appeals.
Mr. Supervisor, I would like to go ahead and move resolutions 18T-001 through 18T-026 as a grouping.
I second that.
Thank you. And Mr. Moore, would you like to address any of those resolutions specifically?
Sure. Just to kind of reiterate what Town Clerk Steckloff said, there are a bunch of these resolutions. Just about all of these resolutions are typical annual resolutions that we pass at our meeting, that we have our organizational meeting, that we have the first full town board meeting of each year. Just to kind of go over a couple of them. 01 is just the rules and procedures for 2018 for the town board. Looks like we've got some banking resolutions on 003 for the town of Penfield. Authorization for the town comptroller to attend a meeting of New York State comptroller officials. We've got some appointments to the zoning board and to the planning board of various members, citizens of the town of Penfield. Also some more technical resolutions such as 006 where we talk about bonding of certain officers of the town. Contract with attorneys for assistance for counsel to planning board and zoning board with the law office of McConville, Considine, Kuhlman, and Morin to assist with the legal work that they do for those two boards. Authorization to sign contracts with a court stenographer. Authorization for the supervisor for professional services with Barton and LaJudas for 2018. Appointments to the ethics board, Tracy Easterly, John Hanratty, and Steve Pello. Revisions to the employee handbook, setting the holidays for non-union employees and also setting holidays for union employees. And just other mileage reimbursements, typical housekeeping type stuff, monthly reports to the town board and the supervisor by the department heads, and so forth. So with that, I certainly would, we've moved and second that, and go ahead with a vote.
Thank you.
Cole?
I'm sorry. Further, just want to make sure there are no further questions by the rest of the board members. Okay, thank you. Then we can do the vote, please.
Cole.
Aye.
LaFountain.
Aye.
Metzler.
Aye.
Moore.
Aye.
Quinn.
Aye.
5 ayes. Under Public Works, 27, naming of landscape consultant to the town of Penfield. 28, setting sewer entrance fees for 2018. 29, appointments to Energy and Environmental Advisory Committee. 30, appointments to the Watershed Management Committee. 31, appointments to Conservation Board. 32, appointment of chair to the Conservation Board. 33, appointment to Historic Preservation Board. 34, appointment of chair to Historic Preservation Board. 35, naming of an architectural consultant to the town of Penfield. 36, authorization to sign a beaver trapping agreement with Donald C. Newcomb. 37, purchase of a 2018 Chevrolet Silverado 2500 HD pickup truck. 38, purchase of a 2018 Ford F-150 XL pickup truck. 39, purchase of a 2018 Ford F-350 XL pickup truck. Number 40, purchase of a 2018 Ford F-550 XL pickup truck. 41, purchase of a 2018 Ford F-750 crew cab dump truck. 42, purchase of a 2018 Ford Transit Connect van. 43, purchase of a 2019 Mack Granite 64 FR10 wheel dump truck with plow and wing. 44, authorizing the supervisor to sign an agreement with BME Associates for land surveying services related to the acquisition of the Shadow Pines property.
So moved.
Second.
I'll just make a few comments, Mr. Supervisor, about some of the resolutions here. Certainly, one thing that stands out to me is the number of residents we have listed both under Public Works as well as other committees that have volunteered their time to work on these committees and help the town board in our work. So I appreciate all the residents who are being appointed to the various committees, either as members or chairs, and look forward to working with them on those that to which I am liaison. Also, within Public Works, there are consultants that continue to do work for the town, landscape consultant as well as an architectural consultant. Very important beaver trapping agreement for nuisance in our waterways. And also 7 different vehicles, the purchase of 7 different vehicles for our Public Works Department to enable them to respond to the needs of our residents from a Public Works perspective and keeping their department safe and up to date. Finally, there is a Shadow Pines related resolution moving forward with having the supervisor authorized to sign an agreement with an engineering firm for land surveying services related to the prospective acquisition of that property. Those are all the comments I have, Mr.
Thank you.
Supervisor.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there further discussion on those resolutions? Seeing none, I'd ask for a roll call vote for that block 18T027 through 18T044.
Cole.
Aye.
LaFountain.
Aye.
Metzler.
Aye.
Moore.
Aye.
Quinn.
Aye.
5 ayes. Public Safety, 18T0545, authorization of temporary assignment of judges. 46, court enforcement officer appointment. 47, appointment of town veterinarian.
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Supervisor, I don't have any comments on these 3 resolutions.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Quinn. Any additional discussion or comments? Seeing none, I'd ask for a roll call vote, please.
Cole.
Aye.
LaFountain.
Aye.
Metzler.
Aye.
Moore.
Aye.
Quinn.
Aye.
5 ayes. Community Services, 18T-048, authorization for supervisor to sign contract for Dayton's Corner School Coordinator. 49, appointments to the Library Board. 50, appointments to the Local History Room Advisory Committee. And 51, authorization for supervisor to sign Penfield Community Television contract.
I move that the resolutions 48 and 51.
I second.
And I just want to mention of the 3 that are appointments, that we continue to appoint Barb Quinn as coordinator of Dayton's Corner Schoolhouse from January 1st, 2018 to December 31st, 2018. She's been doing a fantastic job. And in the library board, 2 people are retiring, Sue Lyon and Dorothea Sanchez, and I want to, as liaison to the library board, I want to thank them for all their hard work. And we are in this resolution appointing Barb Power and Rachel O'Neill in their place. And then in the local history advisory committee, the same people are continuing: Jan Brayman, Don Nelson Nasca, Diane Dayton Riley, Marjorie Salmon, Jay Thompson, and Carolyn Wise.
Okay. Thank you. Further discussion? Seeing none, a roll call vote for that block of resolutions.
Cole?
Aye.
LaFountain?
Aye.
Metzler?
Aye.
Moore?
Aye.
Quinn?
Aye.
5 ayes.
Thank you. Is there any old business to come before the board this evening? Seeing none, new business, and we'll recognize Resolution 052, please.
To provide for the holding of a special town election to vote upon 2 propositions for the approval of bond resolutions adopted by said board and providing for other matters in connection therewith.
Moved.
Second.
Whereas pursuant to bond resolution duly adopted by the town board of the town of Penfield, Monroe County, New York, on November 20th, 2017, authorizing the acquisition of 3 parcels of land containing an aggregate approximately 206 acres located at 745 Whalen Road, 2701 Atlantic Avenue, and 1950 Clark Road within the town, constituting a portion of the site of the former Shadow Pines Golf Club for such future and governmental or public use or uses that shall hereinafter be determined by the town board from time to time at a maximum cost, estimated cost of $3,390,000, the 206-acre parcel project, and further authorizing the issuance of up to $3,390,000 in serial bonds of the town to finance the cost thereof, the 206-acre bond resolution. Whereas pursuant to a separate bond resolution duly adopted by the town board of the town of Penfield on November 20th, authorizing the acquisition of approximately 6-acre parcel of land and buildings on the improvements situated thereon, including without limitation the Clark House located at 1960 Clark Road within the town, constituting a portion of the site of the former Shadow Pines Golf Club for such future governmental and/or public use or uses as shall hereinafter be determined by the town board from time to time at the maximum estimated cost of $260,000, the 6-acre parcel project, and collectively with a 206-acre parcel project, the project. The further authorizing the issuance of up to $260,000 in serial bonds of the town to finance the cost thereof, the 6-acre bond resolution, and collectively with the 206-acre bond resolution, the bond resolutions, and each is a bond resolution. Supervisor, I'd also like to add under notice of special election, notice is hereby given to the qualified electors of the town of Penfield, Monroe County, New York, that a special election in and for said town will be held on February 27, 2018 at the Penfield Community Center, 1985 Baird Road in the town of Penfield, at which the polls will remain open between the hours of 6 a.m. and 9 p.m. prevailing time for purpose of voting on a ballot or voting by ballot on each of the following described propositions submitted for the approval of the qualified electors of said town. Proposition 1, which basically maintains the 206 acres, reads, shall the bond resolution adopted by the town board of the town of Penfield, Monroe County, dated November 20th, 2017, authorizing the acquisition of 3 parcels of land containing an aggregate approximately 206 acres located at 745 Whalen Road, 2701 Atlantic Avenue, and 1950 Clark Road within the town, constituting a portion of the site of the former Shadow Pines Golf Club for such future governmental and public use or uses as shall hereinafter be determined by the town board from time to time at a maximum estimated cost of $3,390,000, authorizing the issuance of up to $3,390,000 in general obligation serial bonds of the town to pay such cost, providing for the issuance of bond anticipation notes in anticipation of the issuance of such serial bonds, determining that the period of probable usefulness thereof and maximum permissible term of any borrowing is 30 years, and pledging the faith and credit of the town to the payment of such obligations and interest thereon be approved. Now, proposition number 2 reads, shall the bond resolution adopted by the town board of the town of Penfield, Monroe County, New York, dated November 20th, 2017, authorizing acquisition of approximately 6-acre parcel of land and building and improvements situated on, including without limitation, the Clark House, located at 1960 Clark Road within the town, constituting a portion of the site of the former Shadow Pines Golf Club for such future government and/or public use or uses as shall hereinafter be determined by the town board from time to time at a maximum estimated cost of $260,000, authorizing the issuance of $260,000 in general obligation serial bonds of the town to pay such costs, providing for the issuance of a bond anticipation note in anticipation of the issuance of such serial bonds, determining that the period of probable usefulness thereof and maximum permissible term of any borrowing is 15 years, and pledging that the faith and credit of the town to the payment of such obligations and interest thereon be approved. Thank you, Mr. Supervisor.
Thank you, Mr. Moore. Discussion?
No.
Seeing no further discussion, a roll call vote, please.
Cole?
Aye.
LaFountain?
Aye.
Metzler?
Aye.
Moore?
Aye.
Quinn?
Aye.
5 ayes.
Okay, this brings us to our second public participation. I did receive one note here on the printer. The note was from Rich on Hidden Meadow. It reads, the town board must set a firm referendum vote date relative to Shadow Pines purchase. And Rich, that was done on that previous resolution. That is set for February 27th, 2018. Seeing no other public participation to come before the board this evening and no further matters to come before this meeting, the January 3rd, 2018 organizational meeting will stand adjourned. The next meeting, the next legislative meeting of this board will be January 17th, 2018. The board stands adjourned at 8:38 p.m. Thank you to PCTV. Thank you to everyone that participated.